These are the best players right now to own in Dynasty Fantasy Football. For one reason or the other, we like their value. We like their addition to your team. And so we think if you own them, you have one of the best players that you can own right now in Dynasty Fantasy Football. And let's talk about these players, starting with our first guy here, Jaxon Smith and Njigba.
Yeah, so JSN, for us, we've liked him since he came out of college, right? And he was very popular. I feel like he was more popular in college than actually going into the NFL because his draft capital was not as good as everyone expected. He was being treated kind of like an exclusive slot wide receiver, which, that's safe, but not an insanely high ceiling in theory, right? Because a lot of people were projecting that he could be Justin Jefferson level coming into the NFL. So he kind of disappoints year one and only puts up like 600-700 receiving yards as a rookie. There are a lot of layers going into that, though. And I'm not trying to, put up a bunch of excuses for Jaxon Smith and Njigba, but it's not like he's... it's not like he didn't meet the thresholds where he's an unsafe wide receiver to invest in, like Treylon Burks, case in point. But with JSN last year, he still had 93 targets playing alongside DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett in an offense where Geno Smith wasn't as good as he was the previous year. And overall, offensively, it just was kind of a dumpster fire. Shane Waldron was the OC there, and now he's the OC for the Bears, which will be interesting to monitor. But look, with him, I think he was a little bit overlooked from an offensive perspective in the way that they ran that offense. I know I'm not an offensive head coach or a coordinator. I'm not calling plays in the NFL, but what I can tell based off of how the Seahawks looked overall last year is that they could have been a lot better, and they really were just there didn't seem like there was a big system or consistent plan that they had in place every single game, and they were kind of just throwing the ball around. And that was proven in the fact that they decided to totally turn over their entire coaching regime. And it's no longer Pete Carroll. It's no longer Shane Waldron. It's now Mike McDonald coming from Baltimore. And yes, he's a defensive head coach, but the OC they brought over from Washington College, the Michael Penix pass-heavy college, is a big reason why I'm so excited about JSN this year. I mean, you're talking about a guy who helped Jalen Polk, McMillan, and Rome Odunze all produce in the same offense with a pass-heavy quarterback in Michael Penix. Do I think that Geno Smith is an elite-level passing quarterback? Not necessarily, but I did see what he did in 2022, and I think that's still in there. I think they just have to utilize him better in his skill sets, and I think that is going to involve Jaxon Smith and Njigba. Another reason that JSN is looking up in 2024 is Tyler Lockett is trending down. And this is not a projection. This is not a saying, oh yeah, we think he's going to trend down. No. This has been a downward trend for the last couple of years. He was very, very good in 2022. He exceeded expectations. And then in 2023, with the same opportunity and roughly the same volume, he was bringing in a lot less targets. He definitely looked like he lost a step, and he just was not nearly as productive or efficient as he was the previous year. So we're seeing a downward trend with Tyler Lockett. He's like 32, 33 now. JSN was brought in to replace that. And yes, it's unfortunate that they brought Lockett back on a short-term deal, but I think this is just trying to bridge that gap between the old regime to the new regime where they can have three solid receivers that they can count on. But JSN, I would project, is going to be at least the second option there behind DK Metcalf. If not, he has the ability to be more productive than DK because DK kind of just gets 1,100 yards. It's just what he gets. JSN, I think, has the ability to have a higher ceiling than that.
I agree with you, and I will say this. We staked our reputation on JSN once in his rookie year, and we lost. So if JSN doesn't hit this year, people might kill us on this one.
Yeah.
But we're
very aware of the shot that we're calling here, but when you're looking at his price,
we're stubborn.
Yeah,
that's
when you're
for sure.
Well,
we just really like him.
We admit where we're wrong, and we were wrong about projecting him to be the wide receiver one last year in Seattle. I don't think I can deny that, and I think his ceiling is lower than we initially projected. But prices change drastically from year to year, and JSN's price last year is not JSN's price this year. I like his price more this year. He's being valued right around guys like James Cook, Ladd McConkey, Mark Andrews, Jonathan Brooks, Isaiah Pacheco, T. Higgins, Kenneth Walker. I'd rather have JSN there. I think Kenneth Walker has as many questions as JSN does, and he's just as unproven, and he's a running back, not a wide receiver. So, there may be plenty of people here that disagree with us. That's totally fine, and the big reason is going to be DK Metcalf and how DK Metcalf takes away from JSN. The nice thing about JSN potentially being a slot exclusive wide receiver is they can actually be complementary assets.
Yeah, and we think there will be complementary assets at that. Let's talk about Tyreek Hill next. And you might be thinking, okay, how is Tyreek Hill, who is now 30 years old, how is a 30-year-old player one of the best players to own on your dynasty team? And my answer is this. And you may have seen this, but Tyreek Hill just got his deal restructured. And this doesn't mean a lot for his, when you're talking about whether he's going to play, whether he's not. He definitely said he was going to play 2024 and definitely said he was going to play 2025. And then, last year he mentioned, okay, I might retire after the next year. And that's fine. But you'll notice that this technically has a third year on it. Now, the deal is essentially a two-year, $54 million deal because last year the deal is not guaranteed. So there's no guaranteed money in the 2026 year of the deal. But what this tells me is that Tyreek Hill, I think he's open to playing in 2026 rather than, what he said. He's going to retire in 2025. I think Tyreek Hill will play past 2025. I don't think he's just going to walk away from the game like that. It's a guess. It's a prediction. That's just what I'm thinking. But here's what I know about Tyreek Hill. You're getting him right now in the third round of Dynasty Startup Draft. So you're getting him, equivalent to some of those guys in that range. Quarterbacks, Brock Purdy, Dak Prescott, Tua Tagovailoa. Other wide receivers like Malik Neighbors and Drake London are going in that range. And in my opinion, none of those guys are winning you a league like Tyreek Hill is. And you're talking about Tyreek Hill being the wide receiver 2 last year and the year before that, having 170 targets each of the last 2 years, being the best player in the NFL as voted by his peers in the NFL Top 100. And yeah, I think a lot of the lower ranges of that list are kind of garbage, but I do think, the top 10 are voted on by I think it's legit that people think that Tyreek Hill is the best player in their league. And that should tell you a lot. It should tell you a lot about a guy who is 30 years old, but hasn't really showed any signs of slowing down yet at all. We all want to predict it, and we all wanted to predict it when he went from Patrick Mahomes to the Dolphins, right? It's like, okay, naturally he's a speed guy. He wins with speed, so he's going to slow down early and he's going to completely fall off a cliff. Maybe someday that's true, but right now there is no cliff for Tyreek Hill. There was not a cliff last year, and there's no cliff in sight right now. Will it come eventually? Absolutely, but I don't care because I'm confident in two things. I'm confident that Tyreek Hill plays in the next 2 years, and I'm confident that if he's on my dynasty roster in that period of time, he's probably going to win me 2 championships. And I like winning dynasty championships, right?
It's pretty nice.
Tyreek Hill, if you were to look, and I wish I had this, but if you were to look at the rate at which Tyreek Hill has won you dynasty championships for the past 2 years, I guarantee that rate is well above average.
5 years.
Honestly, yeah. He's been the wide receiver 2 for the last 3 of the last 4 years. He's been a top 2 wide receiver 4 of the last 6 years. Okay, so Tyreek Hill, I get it. He's 30. Here's the difference between us and your other typical dynasty channel, whatever. People look at value and they look at age and they're like, okay, he's at his value ceiling, or he's capped out. He can only go down. You know what? I'll be honest with you. I don't care if Tyreek Hill goes down in value on my team. And you shouldn't either. Why? Because Dynasty is about winning. This is a player that is going to win you championships over the next couple of years. You should take advantage. If you get him at third round price and you're a contending team, if your 3-year outlook is set to contend this next year or even next year after that, Tyreek Hill's a good piece for that. And I would pay any of the guys in that range for Tyreek Hill because I know he's giving me a really solid shot at a championship. And if you want your 3-year outlook and you want your team archetype to know what you should be doing with your dynasty team during this crucial part of the offseason, that is the 1 month leading up to the season where everybody starts trading again, everybody starts making deals, everybody comes back to life, everybody gets excited about football, you need to know what to do with your team. We can help you do that with a team blueprint. You get one of those for free when you sign up for the annual Motherflocker tier at flockfantasy.com/domain. You have to use code domain. And like I said, annual Motherflocker tier to get a free one. You can also buy a blueprint without being a member of the site. And now Blueprint 2.0, which looks like this, looks completely awesome, is also available for our die-hard players who want even more in-depth analysis from Nathan and I. This is our top product, and so we expect those of you who get this to get the best analysis and our most detailed analysis you possibly can. Like I said, flockfantasy.com/domain. Links in the description. Link is also in the comments section. But let's get back to this list here. These, again, are the best players to own in Dynasty. And this next guy is also going to be controversial because everybody thinks he's essentially dead. So
look, I don't want to keep beating the dead horse with the value argument for Rashee Rice because we've really just talked about that, really hammered it into your brains all off season since the legal stuff came out. I don't really even want to touch on that much with Rashee Rice. I kind of want to approach this from a different angle because I think beyond the legal stuff, there has always been a question of what is Rashee Rice's ceiling in a Kansas City offense where he really is a slot exclusive wide receiver and they just brought in Xavier Worthy, Hollywood Brown, and Kelce isn't really he's not going to be out of there anytime soon with his new contract. I think that's a relevant question to have, and honestly, it was a question that I had pre legal stuff, where I was actually recommending that some people sell him because I was wondering about what his actual ceiling is going to be there. And we did some pretty in-depth research on this in one of our fantasy videos that we're releasing this week over at Domain Fantasy Football. The other YouTube channel, go ahead and subscribe there if you haven't. We're going to be doing a ton of analysis and a ton of stuff there all in season for fantasy football. But what we kind of found out is that not only is Rashee Rice, not only does he have a high floor, he is incredibly safe, and I think has the best chance at being the lead wide receiver, not just in the next couple of years or for the next couple of years, but like this year as well. So on the legal side, looks like his trial isn't even until when, like November, December. So I don't think any suspension is going to come from the NFL this year. If we're looking at suspension issues, it's going to be in 2025. So you kind of throw that aside and you're like, okay, Rashee Rice producing alongside Hollywood Brown, Xavier Worthy, Travis Kelce. What's he going to do? I swear, no matter how we cut it, no matter how conservative we were with the opportunity that Rashee Rice was getting in that offense, no matter how conservative we were with the volume that Patrick Mahomes was providing for all those receivers in that offense, Rashee Rice always came up on top. Yep. Always. And I like Hollywood Brown. I like Marquise Brown's price right now in Dynasty. I think that if he has a good year, his outlook is pretty positive for whatever team he ends up being on from 2025 and beyond. But if we're being realistic and we're being honest with ourselves, Rashee Rice, from the fact alone that he plays slot wide receiver in the Kansas City Chiefs offense, I know that's unpopular, but Patrick Mahomes uses his slot wide receivers. Patrick Mahomes is not afraid to take the check down and to throw the ball 5 to 10 yards downfield and not be a gunslinger all day. Okay, that's something that he had to work on over the past couple of years, and he's found the perfect in-between, and that's perfect production. Really, really nice, safe, and I think a higher ceiling than we initially expected with Rashee Rice in Kansas City's offense. I'm really confident, honestly, at this point that Rashee is not only a good investment because of the legal stuff, but you're going to get really solid production that could really contribute to you potentially making a run in the postseason in Dynasty this year. Yeah,
I totally agree with that. And Brandon Ayiuk is another player that we have on this list for a couple of reasons here. Number one, Brandon Ayiuk, when you look analytically at what he was able to do last season, number one, he was a wide receiver 1 last year, and that was impressive. He scored at a very high clip, especially for being on an offense that really passed less than almost any team in the league last year, and also was playing with Debo and Kittle and Christian McCaffrey and was still performing at that level. And so that's really impressive on its own. But you also look at his reception perception and things like that. The man had some of the best route success of any wide receiver in the entire NFL. I think he's just a certified stud at football. And we could say that and be like, yeah, and a lot of people would just end their argument there. Wide receiver 14 last year, so not a wide receiver 1. My apologies. But with that being said,
points per game he was.
And also, the other big thing with Brandon Ayiuk from a Dynasty fantasy football perspective is the fact that Brandon Ayuk's uncertainty around his contract has kept his value at a very reasonable place, in my opinion. I think Brandon Ayiuk going in the 4th round, for him being the wide receiver 15 and the wide receiver 14 in the last 2 years, and for him to kind of maintain that early mid-4th type of price, I think that's pretty good. And I think once you see Brandon Ayiuk either A, get a contract with the best offense in the league or one of the best offenses in the league with San Francisco 49ers, an extended contract, making him a priority longer than Debo locked in there, longer than Christian McCaffrey locked in there, longer than Kittle locked in there, either that or he gets traded. And what happens when players get traded in Dynasty? Value always goes up, right? So you not only have a 26-year-old wide receiver who's been a high-end wide receiver 2 for the last 2 years on one of the best offenses in the NFL, scoring 7 touchdowns, 8 touchdowns, so not an absurd amount of touchdowns every year. So you know it's somewhat sustainable. Not like we don't have questions about his targets, not like we don't have questions about some of the other parts of his game, but he's been good. You get that production essentially for free because it's baked into his price that he is not on a contract right now that's long-term. And once that kicks in, you're not only going to get production this year, but you're going to get a little bit of a value bump going into next year. And either A, you can move off of Ayiuk if he goes to a sucky situation where you don't like and you don't feel like you want to have him on your Dynasty team anymore, or B, you just essentially reset his value and then you're going to get that production for the rest of his career. He can die on your roster. I think he's one of the best players to own right now because, again, he's good enough to where people respect him enough to draft him in the top 4 rounds of Dynasty leagues, but people are a little bit concerned about the situation, and so there is room for his value to go up.
And look, if nothing else, Brandon Ayiuk will, for the foreseeable future, always have that benefit of the doubt slider with the Dynasty community. Like he's just one of those guys that the Dynasty community has been and always will be enamored with. I can't explain why for certain players. With Brandon Ayiuk, it's just because he's just such a slick route runner, honestly.
Ayiuk,
and he's in one of the best offenses in the NFL.
Fields,
yeah,
right?
Exactly.
All these guys.
They just
Kyle Pitts.
You tell me why. Ayiuk is one of those guys. We have been very vocal about the concerns with Brandon Ayiuk that we have, and he's absolutely going to have to bring his target volume up. But I know this for a fact, with the benefit of the doubt, positive trajectory that Brandon Ayiuk always seems to have with the Dynasty community, you can know for a fact that imaginations are going to run wild when Brandon Ayiuk gets a contract with the Niners or when he gets a contract with someone else. When he gets a contract with the Niners, everyone's going to say, well, they finally committed to him. They finally paid him that much money. So, of course, they're going to use him more than they ever have. If he goes to a different team, they're going to be like, well, they're going to use him more than San Fran ever has. Which there is some merit and some reasonable, concluding that you could have from that. But look, at the end of the day, I'm going to count on the Dynasty community always being higher on Ayiuk than I'll be, which is why I'll hold him now until he gets that deal, and then we can reevaluate his price later.
Yep.
Brock Purdy is another guy that actually he's like in the negative range when it comes to benefit of the doubt slider for the Dynasty community, and it's because no one ever saw him coming, and no one ever expected him to be this productive or be the starting QB. Because Trey Lance had the benefit of the doubt for so long. Puka Nacua, again, another one of those guys. But with Brock Purdy, he's always going to have that label of, I don't even want to go game manager. I'm going to go exclusive fantasy. I cannot get into the game manager stuff or I'm going to get ticked. He's always going to have the you can't run the ball discount, right? No rushing upside discount. How about the premium of being in a Kyle Shanahan offense where he can dump the ball off to Christian McCaffrey any freaking time he wants, and CMC can do 80% of the legwork, quite literally, and just get him a passing touchdown? How about the fact that he has Brandon Ayiuk, whom you love very much, very, very much, enough to rank him as a top 12 Dynasty wide receiver when the most targets he's ever had in a season is like 109. And again, there's reason for that. But seriously, with Brock Purdy, he's not only is he incredibly safe, it's kind of similar to a Rashee Rice type of conversation at the quarterback position. Not only is he very safe, he just produces a top 6 quarterback last year.
Right. When
we said that he has no ceiling. No ceiling? What do you want? In a Superflex format, one of the top 6, he is like upper quartile in production for quarterbacks in Superflex leagues.
He is. You
can ride with Brock Purdy as your number 1 quarterback option, and you're feeling pretty comfortable. If anything, pretty dang safe. They run their offense through Christian McCaffrey. All the more to draft Brock Purdy. Are you kidding me? With the receiving upside that Christian McCaffrey has in his yak ability, Debo's yak ability, George Kittle's yak ability, Ayuk's yak ability, yak. Yeah. I'll invest in that yak. I'm absolutely in at that price with Brock Purdy, and I think you should be too.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's go to Trey McBride here. Trey McBride, honestly, we almost put Dalton Kincaid on this list, and I think you still could, and I'd be fine with it.
I think you should in a lot of scenarios, yeah.
Well, let's talk about McBride. We've talked about him less this offseason, and he was a guy that at the beginning of the offseason, we were looking at his price, and we're like, actually, where do we rank him? Is this warranted? We loved Trey McBride coming out of college because we went. That was one of our famous in person going to the combine years. We do it every year. We live 20 minutes from Lucas Oil, and we go and we're like, we could watch this better on TV. But we did watch Trey McBride. He was a clear cut above everybody else in that class. He was him and Greg Dulcich. They were the two guys that we were like, these guys are really good. But with McBride, I mean, you're looking at what he did last year. He was the tight end 7 on the year. He didn't get above. He didn't get above 60% snap share until week 8. And didn't get, he even after that, like he is 6 targets, 14 targets, 9 targets, 7 targets, 9 targets, 9 targets, 11 targets. Mm-hmm. So notice this. When Trey McBride was playing with Kyler Murray, you saw Kyler Murray do what literally Kyler Murray has done his entire career. Target the frick out of his tight end.
Yep.
And yes, Marvin Harrison Jr. comes in and he projects to be the number 1 option in that offense. This doesn't change that. Trey McBride absolutely projects to be the number 2 because he is the second most talented pass catcher on that team. But he also is somebody that plays in a position and plays a style where Kyler Murray is going to target him an absurd amount. And Trey McBride didn't need touchdowns to do it last year either. He had 3 touchdowns all year and was still a tight end 7. It's actually ridiculous that he did that last year, especially, again, given that he didn't play 60% or more of snaps in a game until after week 8. After week 8. That is halfway through the NFL season where he did that, and he still was a top 7 tight end last year.
And the spike immediately happened the moment Kyler Murray came back.
It was when Kyler came back.
Week 10 is when Kyler Murray started, and that was when he went on his tear. Immediately, 21 points.
And here's the
in
thing.
Week 10.
Trey McBride is like a 4th, 5th round Dynasty startup pick right now. The expectations for the Cardinals this year are so low. They're so low.
Yep.
People may have expectations for Kyler. People may have expectations for Marvin Harrison Jr., but the expectations for the team as a whole are so low, which means what? If somehow Trey McBride, who was, from a target standpoint, if he's got a full season of this, he's going to be a top 3 tight end. For sure.
Oh, yeah.
If he somehow doesn't do that, the expectations are so low with the Cardinals that people in the Dynasty community are going to be willing to give them a little bit of a pass until either A, they draft another difference maker next year on offense, or B, the expectations for the team come up as a whole. So because the expectations are so low, and because we've seen him perform with lower expectations, the expectations were how low here. Kyler was coming off of an ACL. He's a rushing quarterback coming off an ACL. This guy's never started before. He's sitting behind Zach Ertz. He comes in and he does this.
Yep.
The situation's not worse than that, right? Marvin Harrison Jr. helps him more than you know.
Yep.
They're different players. They have different strengths. They play different positions entirely, to be honest with you, but they complement each other super well.
Yeah, and look no further than the high expectations for Marvin Harrison Jr. You're talking about the low overall expectations for Arizona. The astronomical expectations for Marvin Harrison to produce as a rookie it's like Justin Jefferson caliber. Like, you are expecting Marvin Harrison Jr. to be up in the same tier as CeeDee Lamb and Justin Jefferson when it's all said and done. And if that is the case, again, I am not saying that is incorrect or correct or anything like that. That was a neutral statement. There's a factual statement that we're expecting that, but it's a neutral statement on my take on it. Look no further than Justin Jefferson, right? With a pass-happy quarterback in Kirk Cousins playing alongside not only Jordan Addison, but TJ Hawkinson. What did TJ Hawkinson and Justin Jefferson both do when they were together on the field? Top 3 tight end production, number 1 or top 3 wide receiver production at the same time. Right? So we've seen this, and I don't think we have to harp on this too much, but just reinforcing the fact that like top tight ends and elite wide receivers can be very, very productive at the same time. And I think Arizona is the perfect offense for that to happen. And honestly, you're looking at McBride's price as tight end 2. You're like, well, he's tight end 2. He's being priced accordingly. Yes and no, because the overall value ceiling of tight ends right now in Dynasty has really decreased because of how much they've been disappointing over the last couple of years. But you got this new generation of tight ends coming up. Laporta's up top, and then you have that tier break between Laporta and then McBride and Kincaid. McBride and Kincaid going back to back. McBride's actually done it. He's actually done the production. Kincaid hasn't yet. We are technically projecting with Dalton Kincaid. And I like Dalton Kincaid. I think he's a great value. But with McBride, I think he may be one of the better tight end values right now in Dynasty Fantasy Football because he technically, from a volume perspective and opportunity perspective, has a higher outlook and higher ceiling than Sam Laporta does, playing alongside Amon-Ra St. Brown, admittedly Jamison Williams, and then Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery getting receiving work and a lot of touchdowns in the red zone as well.
Yeah, sure up.
So the next guy that we're going to have here is Travis Kelce. We're going to stick with the theme of tight ends. And I'm going to tell you, man, I've done a number of Blueprint 2.0s at this point. And in Blueprint 2.0, one of the new sections that we have in there is the hold section. Mm-hmm. We offer 2 holds, basically guys that we're not necessarily going out there and buying because, they're on your team. But we also want to tell you, we want to go out of our way to tell you, do not offload this player right now. Don't do it. And Travis Kelce, every single time someone owns Travis Kelce, I'm telling them to hold him. Why? Because he will forever and always be undervalued from this point on until he retires. Because he is 35 years old, and that is freaking horrifying for anyone that's not a quarterback in Dynasty. And you'll have other creators on YouTube tell you otherwise and say offload Travis Kelce right now. His price is absolutely abysmal. Do you want to win your league?
Which, here's the thing.
Do you like winning your league? Here's
the thing on that, Nathan. You remember we had a video last year telling you to sell Travis Kelce. Not because we thought Travis Kelce was going to retire. Not because we thought he was going to be washed. Because it was fairly obvious that where Travis Kelce was going in Dynasty Startups last year, which was like 3rd round, it was fairly obvious he wasn't going to maintain that value year over year.
Well, not only not maintain, but cut in half. Because, we talked about Tyreek Hill here and why are we holding Tyreek Hill compared to selling Travis Kelce last year? It's because Tyreek Hill, when you're projecting out is probably not, his value is probably not going to be cut in half going into
won't.
2025 because he's going to be that productive. Just with the nature of tight end values right now, we projected that Travis Kelce's value was going to take a huge L going into 24.
The point of that is last year was the time to sell Travis Kelce. Last year was the last year that he had elite dynasty value, top 3 round dynasty startup value, right? Last year you sold him. Now he's worth a 5th or 6th round dynasty startup pick. I mean, guys, this is a guy that is still voted as one of the top 10 players in the league and on the top 100 list. A guy that even though he had, not as good a season last year, he's still at 121 targets, almost 1,000 yards. This is a guy that's going to be playing with new receivers that are going to open up the field for him. This is a guy who was playing injured last year. This is a guy that's dating Taylor Swift, by the way. That matters for something, right? That should give him a little bit of dynasty value.
A guy that you can generally count on to get a significant amount of touchdowns as well, and this was one of the outlier years.
And he had 5 touchdowns last year. This is a guy that if you really wanted to get out before he lost the majority of his value, the difference in value between round 3 and round 6 are about equivalent to the difference in value between round 6 and round 12 or 13.
Yep.
So you really, and Travis Kelce, even if he has the same year he had last year, is not going past round 8 next year, you're not losing that much value compared to what you would have lost if you held Travis Kelce through this last year. And so what does that mean? That means last year was the time to sell to get out on his elite value. Now he does not have elite value. What does he have? He has decent mid-range value. He's being priced among where? Rookies, high upside wide receivers, right? Younger quarterbacks that are unproven, running backs that are somewhat productive, but we have question marks about. That's where he's being priced. And so at that price, you're telling me that you should sell Travis Kelce? No. And also, we talked about contracts. Travis Kelce, didn't he just restructure his contract as well?
Yeah, he did, where it pretty much guaranteed him to be around for the next 2 to 3 years, I believe.
It's not... what are you going to get in return for Travis Kelce? Essentially, what you're going to get is you're going to get a shot on somebody that has a chance of going up to where Travis Kelce was valued, or you're going to grab somebody else on the way down. You're going to grab a Devontae Adams, a Stephon Diggs, right? You can take a shot on a Lad McConkey there, a Jonathan Brooks. You can take a shot on Jordan Addison and hope his value goes up. Or you're also going to be pivoting if you're a contender. You really need the points. You can't really give away the premium at tight end, especially if you play in tight end premium leagues. You can't really give away the advantage that Travis Kelce gives you unless you're down tiering to somebody like TJ Hawkinson, and TJ Hawkinson's probably not even going to play the first part of the year. So again, it doesn't really matter which way you look at this. Travis Kelce, if you try to get out on him early, you're not early. In fact, you're too late. Last year was the year to do it, and now he's somebody it's worth him dying on your roster. He's playing with Patrick Mahomes. Who's Hawkinson playing with, right? And you're not getting another elite tight end that cheap.
No.
Take Travis Kelce and let him die on your roster forever and ever.
Yes.
Let's talk about A.J. Brown just here to finish it real quick. We put A.J. Brown on this list. He was the highest paid wide receiver in the NFL there for about a couple of weeks before Justin Jefferson got his
like
contract.
6 hours.
It did feel like 6 hours, but it's a guy that's been a top 6 wide receiver each of the last 2 years since he's been on the Philadelphia Eagles. He's a guy that, from a consistency standpoint, pretty much catches everything thrown his way. This is a guy that you can count on at a 3rd-round price in Dynasty Startup Drafts. He's only 27 years old. Probably for the next 4 years, he's going to be this good.
Yeah.
He's in his prime.
Yep.
He's a receiver in his prime on one of the best offenses in the NFL. Just don't overthink it. A.J. Brown is somebody that I am drafting a lot of, but especially this year, he's really set up to have a good year. So A.J. Brown is somebody where if you can even go get him for a pretty decent price for an unproven player in that range, I think I'm willing to do that as well. But these are all, again, the 8 best guys that we think you can own in Dynasty for one reason or another. A lot of times it's for value reasons, it's for production reasons, whatever. But in terms of like who we think are the best values, the best overall producing players, whatever it may be, these are the guys that we think, these are the best people to own right now. This is who I want on my Dynasty team. So do us a huge favor. If you play Dynasty, make sure you drop a like, make sure you subscribe, and make sure you come join the biggest Dynasty community on planet Earth over at flockfantasy.com/domain. Use code domain when you sign up to get in our Discord so you're in with all the other Dynasty players, and choose the Motherflocker tier. That way you can get access to all of our Dynasty tools, our rankings, the trade calculator, the My Teams page, and then you get team blueprints as well. You get a free one with the annual membership, but you also get 30% off any other team blueprints after that. So flockfantasy.com/domain. Appreciate you guys. We'll see you later.